Hi guys, today I'm going to do some maintenance and perform a major upgrade on my second generation Tama Iron Cobra double bass drum pedal. Keep watching. Hey guys, so today I'm going to do some maintenance on my second generation Tama Iron Cobra double bass drum pedal. I have had this double bass drum pedal for well over 15 years and it performs great. But like anything mechanical, eventually it's going to need some maintenance. Also, some parts have worn out, and I'm going to replace the footboards with the current generation, the fourth generation Iron Cobra footboards, which have a much more robust, a beefier bottom hinge. And also the newer footboards are actually a little bit longer, and so that should make the pedal feel a little bit lighter and hopefully perform a little bit better. Let's get started. Alright guys, so here's my second generation Iron Cobra double pedal. And if you use this pedal, especially if you have one of these second generation Iron Cobra pedals, you'll probably notice a couple of things straight away. The first is my main pedal has the Flexi Glide cam with the nylon strap, and my slave pedal is the Power Glide with the double chain. I did that years ago. When I bought the pedal, it was the Power Glide with the chain on both cams. And then for other gigs where a double pedal wouldn't be appropriate, I bought a single pedal Flexi Glide. It was on sale. I thought I'd give it a shot. And I like the feel of the Flexi Glide so much as my main pedal that I actually took apart the whole mechanism here, swapped the cams, and so now my primary drive on the double pedal is the Flexi Glide. But I like the chain on my slave pedal because, frankly, like so many of us, my left foot isn't as strong, isn't as precise as my right foot, and I just like the way it feels. The other thing you might notice is the connecting shaft. It's silver. When the bearings, when the U-joints wore out on my original and it was time to upgrade, I decided to, instead of replace it with the OEM connecting shaft, which was black, I went with the connecting shaft from the Speed Cobra for two reasons. Number one, the U-joints are much, much bigger, much more robust, much sturdier, and also, because they're bigger, the total length that I can extend this is about 2 inches longer than the original connecting shaft, and that's important to me because I'm one of those silly drummers that puts the slave pedal to the left of my hi-hat pedal, so I need as much room to expand as possible. Anyway, enough of that. What we're going to do is I'm going to break down the two pedals, and then we're going to get into all the bearings and clean them and re-lubricate them and put everything back together. And then I'm going to replace these footboards, but I'm going to show you that later. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to do all the maintenance here on the primary pedal because essentially the componentry is the same for the slave pedal. So when you remove the bearings and whatnot on the primary drive, if you can do that, you can do it on the slave drive. Or the slave pedal, rather, is a lot easier to take apart. So for the sake of time, I'm not going to show you how to do the slave pedal because it's essentially the same as the master pedal, the primary pedal. So I'm just going to work in this video, I'm just going to work on taking apart the master pedal. So the first thing we have to do, obviously, is take off the beaters and take off the footboard. Top tip, you've got these little beater weights here. Some people use them as weights to fine-tune the feel of the beater, but if you bring them all the way down here, they can be used as memory locks. That is probably not new information if you have one of these pedals. But just in case, I thought I'd let you know. Anyway, so the first thing is to take apart the pedal, remove the beaters, and remove the footboard. So the first thing is I'm going to loosen this drum key down here. Set that aside. And next, the original footboards are connected to the stability plate by 3 screws. One here, and one here. Now I've already removed this one, so I'm just going to remove these 2. Okay, now the reason I'm replacing my footboards is because the little bearings here have worn out on my main pedal. And so, hear that? They click, and you can see it. You can see how much play there is. So, 2 things. First, I don't have any tools small enough to get in there to loosen, remove, and replace whatever might be missing. I think it's just like a little nylon washer that went missing or broke apart, whatever. And that's why there's all this play now and noise. So Tama's alternative, Tama's solution to this is to simply replace the entire pedal. They don't sell this bearing assembly separately. So if it was time to upgrade, then I thought, well, let me see if the pedal on the current generation Iron Cobra would work. And sure enough, it fits. Those 2 screws, those 2 screw holes fit perfectly to the stabilizer plate. And the bearings here, essentially the same design, but they're more robust, and there's 0 play in these pedals. Also, you'll see here, the hinge is actually set back about 3/4 of an inch, which essentially makes the new footboard a little bit longer than the old footboard. So hopefully the pedal itself will play a lot smoother and feel a little bit quicker. Anyway, we'll see. But that's later in the video. First, we have to complete taking this apart. So the first thing we have to do is remove the springs. I'm not actually going to remove them from here. I won't need to do that. But next, there's these two little hex keys, Allen keys, whatever, in the top here, in the top of the towers, that are holding in the bearings and basically holding in the whole mechanism. So I have to loosen those, and then under here I have to loosen that. I have to loosen the beater shaft holder and slide that out of the way so that I can get into here and loosen that piece, and then this whole piece will slide right out. Okay, so the first thing I'm doing is removing these top Allen keys, and I'm not actually going to remove them completely. I'm just going to loosen them. Now, just FYI, be very careful when you're loosening and tightening these little Allen keys, because I've actually, I don't know if the camera will focus on this, but I've actually stripped this one. So I'm not going to be able to tighten it down very much, but that's okay, because really all this thing does is hold in a retaining ring. So there really doesn't need to be a whole lot of pressure here, but just be warned, be careful. Don't over tighten. And again, I'm just loosening them and getting them out of the way. Okay, now I'm loosening the cam. And now I have to loosen the beater rockers. I think that's what they're called. I'm not sure. Okay, so the beater rockers are completely loose, and now I can move this one out of the way just enough to get to these two Allen keys under here. Now you want to make note of where you're loosening these. See these little hash marks here? So that when you put it back together, you'll know basically, you know, where your pedal was set. You'll probably have to readjust it once everything is back together, but if you can just make a mental note of where it is, it'll be a good starting point when you're putting it all back together. All right, and now everything is just starting to slide right apart. Okay. Okay, there's everything apart. Now I'm going to set the stabilizer plate and the towers aside for a second and continue to take apart all these bearings. Okay, so for these bearings, we've got two on this end. All right, so I'll have to clean these bearings. I'll have to clean these bearings while they're still on this axle, but that's fine because I'm going to clean this entire axle shaft. Over here, you've got a bearing in here, or a retaining clip in here, and then a bearing in there. So I'm going to pull that out. Oh, there's two bearings in there. And you can see all the dirt that's coming off. Ugh. It's an interesting design. Basically, when everything is together, it's just this axle just kind of pivots inside. I mean, it rides on these bearings, but it basically just pivots inside this piece, and it's just kind of held in by pressure. That's about it. All right, so time to start cleaning. There is still this bearing here. So these are the retaining clips. They're the retaining rings that I was talking about before inside the shaft towers here. So let me pull all this out. So this little retaining ring, this Allen key up here, you just need enough pressure to hold this retaining ring in, and the same on the other side. It doesn't need to be tight, just needs to be held in place, because this retaining ring holds in this bearing assembly. Now for the cleaning. So I've got a microfiber cloth which has seen better days, And I'm going to use brake part cleaner. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to saturate the rag with the brake part cleaner and then basically just wipe off all the old grease. The brake part cleaner does a great job of getting all the grease off. So the bearing is nice and clean. That's going to be a little tricky. So all right, not bad. Last thing I'm going to do is just run this rag into the towers here. Give them a good clean. And while I'm at it, I'm going to wipe down my footboard, or the stabilizer plate rather. All right, that's it. All the parts are clean, and now it's time to reassemble. All right, guys, so for the reassembly, I'm going to use this basically automotive grease. It's for wheel bearings, U-joints, fan hubs, etc. And it's gross. Lovely. Now, for this stuff, for the reassembly here, less is more. You don't want to overdo it with this. I'm going to start with this piece. And this piece has two axles, or two bearings that go in, and then a retaining ring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tub of grease here and basically just going to plop it right in, just like that. Now that to me is a little bit too much, so I'm going to scrape some off. And since my hands are going to get filthy no matter what, I'm just going to rub that grease in, work it all around. And I'm going to do that for each bearing. And then I'm going to slide this in. There we go. Same for this one. Just give it a plop. All right. Good. Now the retaining ring doesn't need any grease, so I'm just going to plop that in. Okay, so that's done. Now next, is the retaining ring assembly that goes into this top of this tower, and that's this bearing here and this little washer. So same thing, just going to dip that in the grease. Wipe off the excess and just get it nice and saturated on both sides. Just a thin coat. Pop that in place. Now this little guy, I think I may end up putting this guy in once I reassemble everything, because there's no way to really keep that in place. So there's the retaining ring. Okay, the retaining ring is in place, and so just temporarily I'm just going to lightly tighten down this screw. Again, these do not need to be tight. They just need, and I can feel when it makes contact, they just need to hold in the retaining rings. That's it. If you over tighten, you'll strip that and you won't be able to get it back out. Okay, so next I'm going to lubricate this bearing. This one's going to be a little more tricky because I can't seem to get this assembly apart. I don't know if it comes apart, and if it does, I don't remember how to do it. So that's okay though, because again, it doesn't need a whole lot of grease, so I'm just going to get a little grease on my fingers and just kind of work it in. You could probably use a Q-tip if you wanted. All right, that's good enough. Now, okay, now remember that once all this is reassembled, this shaft here basically just pivots. It fits into this section and basically just pivots. So you might be able to see on camera, there's a little bit of excess grease down at the bottom there. But once I slide everything back together, I'm actually going to dip this into the grease tub there and get this a little bit more lubricated up. So once it makes contact inside here, it's well lubed and hopefully there won't be any friction. So now it's basically time to reassemble everything. So here we go. Alright guys, so it's time for reassembly. First thing I'm going to do is insert this straight through. And if you remember, I've got this little washer here. This needs to slide on, like so. And then there's the spring assembly here. Now, I remember that I had this little hash mark basically lined up with the flat part of the axle here. So again, it's not perfect. I'm more than likely going to have to readjust once everything is assembled, but for now, this is good enough. Tighten this down. Just like so. Not over tightened. And don't worry about this play, because this will be taken care of once everything else is connected. Next is this beater rocker. All right. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, because as I'm inserting this axle in, I also have to reassemble all of these pieces. So the first thing I'm going to do is dip this tip into the grease and get this tip a little bit more lubed up. Alright, so that's basically it. Can you guys see that? Just a real thin coating of grease. That's about it. Okay, time for reassembly. I'm going to start to insert this. Now the first thing that needs to go on is this guy. This is what the beater rocker for the primary drive, this is what this floats on. Now, I've got these two screws here, but I'm not 100% sure on the positioning. But an easy way to see is by looking at where the indents are from the last time it was assembled. So there they are, so I know that this is going to go on like this. Alright, so that's that. Next is going to be the beater rocker. And finally, there's the indents from where the cam connects or tightens down. So I'm going to line that up as well, like that. And there we go. All right, it's in. Okay. All right, so next we got to tighten up all the Allen keys. All right, guys, so the first thing I'm going to do is get this assembly roughly back into the same area that it was in. So if you remember, if you noticed, you've got these little hash marks here on this black cap, and also this hash mark here on this adjusting piece. And so this was roughly where it was. It's not 100%. It's just enough to help me get started with the reassembly. And I have to tighten down this Allen key. And again, this does not need to be over tight. I've already stripped this Allen key, so I have to be really extra careful here. As soon as there's tension, that is about it, because I do not want to strip this anymore. That's it. So now I need to first tighten down the two Allen keys here, and then this one on the cam. Okay, and that gives this room. Now for the cam here, I want to make sure that this is centered. There we go. So I'm actually going to line up one of the footboards. And you can see that that's off center, so I'm going to move it over just a bit. And that's about right. I don't want the cam to touch this piece because this moves independently of this piece, so if it's touching, it'll cause some friction. Same for this. I don't want this to be touching the tower because it'll cause friction. All right, so that is roughly where things go. Now I'm not going to bother tightening down my beater rockers yet because the pedal's not assembled yet. So, but this is pretty much where things are going to go. I can put my springs back on. And that's pretty much it for now. Alright guys, so that is it for the reassembly of the main system. Again, if you can do the primary pedal, then you can do the slave pedal. There's really nothing to it. You just got to take everything apart, loosen up these two top retaining bolts, take this off, and the whole shaft will slide out that way. Once the shaft is out, you can clean and lubricate the bearings and the towers here and here, and just reassemble. There's really nothing to it. Alright? Alright guys, so up next is mounting the new footboards. And you will notice that these two screw holes here match up perfectly with these two original holes in the stabilizer plate. Now, if I wanted, I could just mount these two screw holes and call it a day, and that'll be fine. But I'm actually going to take it a step further. When you buy a new footboard, it comes with screws for these two holes and screws for these two holes. So I'm going to measure these holes out, and I'm actually going to drill into the stabilizer plate so that I can mount these two screws as well. It's not necessary, but I don't know. I figure they're there for a reason. So I'm going to go ahead and measure and drill out in my stabilizer plate. Now the stabilizer plate is steel, so in order to drill through steel, you need drill bits that are designed to drill through steel. I got these at Lowe's, this whole 21-piece kit, for only $10. So first I'm going to measure everything, and then I'll resume the video once I'm ready to start drilling. Alright guys, so I've measured where the holes are going to be, and you can see I've put a couple little cross marks there. That's where I'm going to be drilling. Alright, and I've got the stabilizer plate clamped down with two C-clamps, so it's nice and secure. So I'm going to start by drilling a couple of small pilot holes and eventually build up to the same diameter hole as these. Alright, so here we go. Alright, not bad. Of course, the correct way to be doing this would be to center punch those two cross marks, but unfortunately I don't have a center punch set, so I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I got this one perfect. This one's a little off kilter, but once I build up to the 1/4 inch bit, I'll finagle it and expand the hole just a little bit. the next thing I have to do is remove some of the rubber lining from underneath in order to mount the screws properly. So let me get all set up and then I'll resume the video. Guys, I'm back. And so these are the two new holes that I drilled right here. But as you can see, there's all this rubber lining on the bottom. So I need to remove this in order to make the screws sink down properly and fit. So basically, all I'm going to do is use an X-Acto knife, and I have a razor blade here, and I'm just going to cut some of this away and then just peel it back. So let's see how that goes. All right. That was actually easier than expected. All right, so now, moment of truth. Let's see how far off this hole is. I'm going to start by mounting the two lower holes because I know that those line up properly. And you can see that because of the cone-shaped head on the screw, as I sink in and pull the footboard closer to the plate, because of that cone-shaped head, it's automatically going to line up the pedal properly. All right, so those screws are in, and you know what? It's not that bad. Actually, I'm closer on this side. Huh. I thought I was further off on that side, but it turns out this side is more exact, and it's this side that's further off. Let me see, though, if I can still get the screw in there. And it looks like I can. Might be a little tough. Yep, it's going. So the screws aren't protruding past the rubber lining. It does look like the pedal is a little bit off. It's not bad at all. I'm going to loosen the screws and see if maybe I can align it just a little bit better. I think what's happening is as I tighten this one, this is what's pulling the pedal out of alignment just a bit. So I'm going to try to open up this hole a little bit more. So let me do that and I'll resume the video later. Alright guys, so I widened this hole just a little bit. So now let's see if the footboard lines up a little bit better. And when the two OEM holes are tight, the pedal is perfectly aligned. So now, yep, I can tell already this is going to be fine. So just by widening the hole a little bit, I can now install these two screws and cinch them down. I don't need to over tighten them. I just need to cinch them down a little bit. That's it. Perfect. And the pedal is perfectly aligned. Awesome. So now let's put the beaters back in and get everything set back up on this pedal. Alright guys, so that's about it. I've got the pedal reassembled. Now I still have to do all the assembly on the slave pedal, but I'm not going to waste time filming all that because, like I said earlier, it's essentially the same procedure as far as taking the pedal apart and putting it back together, and the same thing for measuring out the stabilizer plate on the slave pedal, drilling the holes, removing the excess rubber, etc., etc. It's all basically the same thing for the slave pedal. So I'm not going to bother filming that. Once I get all that done, I'll get it all back together and I'll throw the pedal, the complete pedal, up on my electronic pad and adjust everything, and I'll film that. I'll show you guys that once the complete pedal is done. Alright guys, so here is the completed reassembled pedal. Don't mind my messy floor. I currently have it hooked up to my Roland KD07 or KD7, whatever it is. Just for practice, just to make sure, just to get everything adjusted. For now, it's fairly well dialed in, but I'll have to do some more adjusting once I have it on my acoustic bass drum. But that's it. Alright, so thanks for watching guys. I hope you found this video informative. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, hit the subscribe button. It's free to you, but it means a lot to me. You know, if you're into the other things that I'm into, which is hiking and photography, then please definitely subscribe. Most of my channel is about hiking videos and about the adventures that I go on, finding abandoned places and other interesting things around the New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania area, other cool stuff to see. So if you're also into that kind of thing, subscribe to my channel. In the meantime, again, thanks for watching. I hope you found this informative. See you next time. Thanks.